Okay, cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's amazing to have so many people online. My name's Rachel Addy and I am a trainee teacher at Great Marlow School. Along with being a trainee teacher, I've taken on the role of eco lead, and this is why I wanted to pull this presentation together on the Textile Botanical Garden. We are the Textile Skills Centre, so we are a voluntary, we're built of volunteers, and we're here to kind of support teachers around the UK. Providing you with free resources, paid courses, and lots of other, well, we've got our social media and lots of things that I'll go into in just a minute. So my slides will let me move. Here we go. I won't go through too many of these bits of information. Just bear in mind, any information that we do share is only to be used within schools and not to be shared on social media, please. And then let's go on to the next bit. Okay, so just a little bit about why I started the textile garden. I don't know if any of you have heard about eco schools or if any of you are applying to go down the eco schools route. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it because I've popped the link on here, but essentially I started to get interested in this idea of how can we make our school more environmentally friendly. I have sinned a lot in my past and prior to teaching, spent the last 9 years working in fast fashion, primarily with very cheap brands, and therefore have probably damaged the environment a lot myself. So I'm repenting my sins. The kids love these stories, by taking on the role of eco leads. So Eco Schools Accreditation is just kind of like a platform that is put together to help schools kind of question what it is they're doing and give you guidelines and frameworks to help you change the way you do things. So it goes through 11 different steps. You work your way through all of them, and then at the end of it, you get a green flag, and my flagpole went up today. I was so excited. The site team came to tell me there's a flagpole in the school, which is really exciting. So do have a read about eco schools. It is something that's really good, especially for secondary schools, because it's really easy to get for primary because of the control that they have. But for secondaries, it's more difficult. We went from, I don't know how many we had in the beginning, maybe 6, and I've now got a team of 46 eco warriors. And they call me the Pied Piper now, because everywhere I go, they kind of follow me around the school, which is, I think is a really good thing, because they are really, really keen. So that's kind of how it started for me. We started gardening at school was kind of the first thing that we did, and I'll show you some pictures later, but we had these really hideous plant beds outside our reception area, and I just looked at them and said to the head teacher one day, do you mind if I sort those out? And I don't think he actually realized I was going to turn up with my fork and my spade and dig it out myself, which I did. And gardening, not just for the students, but for me and for us as well, it has heaps of mental health benefits. Not just the gardening side of it, but sitting in the garden, enjoying a cup of tea, which I have done, and the students still find me hiding in the garden. It provides like a retreat area, so somewhere that, again, staff or students can go and just kind of have a minute. And when we first developed our garden at school, I think it was within the first week, we had an assembly on, and 1 year 7 was too scared to go into the assembly. And she actually sat in our little garden with the doors open, looking into the assembly. And it just kind of really reiterated the fact that this was a beautiful kind of calming place for the students to be. It does definitely encourage students to take responsibility. So we have developed our own gardening club alongside the Eco Club, which I'll go into more detail about shortly. Cross-curricular was one of the main reasons I started looking at it. Before I even got into the eco stuff, as a new teacher, I was obsessed with this idea of cross-curricular links and how can we kind of alleviate workloads by using bits of English framework and taking bits from science and, kind of working together a little bit more. And that's kind of how I got into it in the first place. So there's loads of benefits to having a garden in your school. And I'm not going to go into more than that, because honestly, I could talk for hours just on that itself. But then the question kind of leads to as to like, how does gardening link to textiles? And believe it or not, it definitely does. We've got things like plant studies. So I know when I was doing my A level quite a long time ago, we did a project on nature. So many schools are doing, kind of plant related projects or nature related projects where they can go out and they can just kind of do some sketching and drawing. We've got as well collecting plant leaves where we can do some different prints with them, whether that just be standard press printing or eco printing. We've got natural and bundle dyeing, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, especially when Fiona comes on the line. And then I've got some ideas for an upcycled botanical print project, which we will show you a scheme of work for. Nikki's just been spell checking it and helping me out with it. I'll put that up in a moment. And then we just kind of thought about, or thinking about, ways to kind of encourage other departments to get involved in this, and maybe thinking about like a graphic design competition, getting students to kind of go out and landscape the garden for you. And sketch that up. We had a few, I was mentoring a student with behavioural issues last year, and he was so into his landscape gardening. I gave him a project, just some wood and some tools, and said, go and build me some plant beds. And, he drew it all out for me, and it was great. It was another great way to get graphics into that. And also looks good when you're presenting it to leadership. There's also, I'm not going to read through this, don't panic. I know it's a lot, Don, sorry. But there's also massive industry links at the moment as well to this idea of natural dyeing and natural printing. I've spoken to a few industry professionals about this actually before my teaching career, and kind of asked, why are we not using natural dyes anyway? Like, why is this not a thing? And the guy kind of explained it to me that we would need a field from London to Edinburgh with just one plant in it alone to be able to get enough dye stuff to be able to kind of produce for the amount of things we consume, the amount of product that we would need in the UK. We just don't have the capacity for it. Which does make perfect sense, I think. But it's interesting to see that people, and I'm sure you're all following the fashion revolution if you're on this chat, people like the fashion revolution, they are starting to build awareness as to, what types of dyes and plants we can use and kind of use naturally rather than the synthetic version. So, if you've got an opportunity to go to the Chelsea Flower Show, then by all means, it's a good opportunity. It's the Chelsea Flower Show. I wonder if I could get that signed off as a trip. I'm not sure, but it'd be good if we could. So do have a look into, the industry links there. I'm a design and technology specialist, so I'm not doing art textiles. We've often got to have links to the industry and what the industry is doing. So at any point you're doing natural dyeing and printing in the classroom, this is very relevant right now. Again, more links are on there if you need them. And then I just want to kind of come back to this idea of cross-curricular, because I don't think for a minute we really stopped to consider how many cross-curricular links there can be in this project. And I've broken down, honestly, just a few. So my map's quite small. Sorry if you can't read it all in detail, but just to pull out a few, looking at science, history, food prep, art, and geography, the links to science, I could have done a whole mind map just on that. It really is incredible. If you're looking at things like pH values of water, mordants, you're looking at the variables and kind of creating lists of how, the variables work. I mean, that's, Fiona will be on the line in a minute, but that was one of the most interesting things Fiona was teaching me when I went on a print course for this was, even wherever you are, north or south, the water's different, the soil's different, there's lots of different variables. And, the science department are very keen on recording variables and kind of coming up with ideas as to what the outcomes will be. And we did do some tests and trials in school as well, which worked really well. So again, just ask your science department, do you have a table that you use to record variables? And mine were very happy to give me one. Food preparation and nutrition, I just thought was an interesting one because it comes under the D&T umbrella for us. But most of the plants or herbs, they all do print and have natural colour in them. So when you've got your little garden and you've got your herb beds, you can then send your students over to the herb beds to pick them, to nip over to textiles to do their dyeing, which is, again, really nice. They can be used in the kitchen, and then they can also be used in your printing. So that's a really nice one. And also food waste. So just heading over to the canteen and saying, can I have your onion skins? Or, although ours don't use onion skins anymore, apparently they buy them pre-chopped. But anyway, we won't go into that one. That's another discussion. But you could, ask the food department if they've got any food waste products that they want to, that could be used for your printing and dyeing as well. Art department, history department. I mean, history as well is another really good one, because obviously hundreds and thousands of years ago, we didn't have chemical dye product. We used natural dyes. That's what we did. And that's kind of where a lot of the cave paintings came out. So really, really interesting links. And again, I could spend hours talking about that. So I'll let you investigate further where that goes. So how do we get started? How many of you are going to get my plant the seed here? If I say it with that, then hopefully you all get it. So like I said, the first thing that I did was talk to leadership. So on the left-hand side here, you can see these hideous plant beds that were driving me mad. outside our department. Well, no, they weren't outside my department, they're outside the admin office. And I just kept looking at these thinking the stinging nettles are going to get anyone at any point. Someone needs to go out there and make them look pretty. So myself and one of the food teachers, we went out there. We spent, I think it took us about 4 days to dig all this out. You wouldn't believe. I think they'd been in there 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. And it took an awful long time. But the benefit of them and the way that they look now is just so much better. So we started by getting leadership's approval and then actually did these ourselves. We didn't get the students involved at this point, but following on from this, myself and Carol, who's on the line, hi Carol, who's my, who is not mine, she's mine, gardening lead for our school. She then came and we worked together to create this kind of gardening club where we now get the students to maintain the areas. I also ran during the summer holidays a botanical contact print workshop for the year 6s into 7s. So when I started getting the eco warriors together and kind of forming this group, I really quickly realized don't bother with year 11. I'm not even sure I can say bother with year 10. I think we've got one year 10 as our eco lead. It's do they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Is that the right saying? I think so, isn't it? They're just not really interested at this point. And I think what we found to be the most beneficial when trying to kind of recruit students is to get the younger years. 7s, 8s and 9s are much more likely to listen to what you have to say about the environment because it's there, they care about it a lot more, we found. So we decided as well, we've been into primary schools as well and thought about, well, if we get the primary schools that are already doing all of this eco stuff, if we can continue that into year 7 and 8, it just kind of keeps the ball rolling. So we had year 6s come into school for a week. I'm sure a lot of you do the same, like summer schools. And we did a cross-curricular food technology and textiles. It was quite cute. We had one of our teachers did a bread baking session with them, and then they came to textiles and used leaves to make like a little wrap to wrap their bread up, Dick Whittington style. We didn't give them the bamboo or anything, but you can imagine it, can't you? They wrapped all their little loaves of bread up and things, which was, it was really quite nice. So we ran a workshop during the summer. And then the other thing, I guess, is to find a space in your school. If you've got one like I had here, brilliant. If you don't panic, because there's plenty of ways that you can still find or make space in school. You don't necessarily need, we have not touched the fields at school. There's been no need. I don't even think they'd let me if I wanted to. PE department would find me, but we haven't needed to. We've found other areas. And I think it's just important to mention to anybody that, is challenging. I don't think anyone will challenge you on gardening, but just to, remind them that you're improving the environment, the aesthetics and the air quality of the school. And again, just looking at my pictures here proves that point through and through. So just to kind of reiterate this point that you don't need ground space, there are ways that you can have an eco garden without having to dig down into the ground. So pallets have been a massive help for us. We've built our own plant bed from pallets. We built our own plant beds from tyres, which I'll tell you in a moment, my head teacher hated in the end. So looking at the one on the left, I mean, this one is just a Pinterest image. It's not mine. The other 2 images are mine. We do hope to do one like this outside our food room. It's just such an easy way to bring kind of the garden into the school if you don't have the physical, the actual ground to plant into. We went to ATS garage just down the road, and they actually gave us, I think we got 10 tyres for them, but they just kind of were trying to bite our hands off. They were like, take as many as you want, because local garages pay to have their tyres recycled. They pay to have the waste taken away. So if you want any amount of tyres, they'll let you have them. But like my head teacher, we decided to do ours with daffodils for Mental Health Week. So we got the students to plant daffodils as a symbol for Mental Health Week. Again, we did it cross-curricular with Wordsworth in the English department and his famous poem. And I wrote a bit of a lengthy email, okay, like I'm still getting used to the fact that when you email the head, it needs to be one-liners or they don't read it. But he didn't read to the end of my email, and he keeps saying to me now that he's learned his lesson to read to the end of an email, because I won't use the strong word. He strongly dislikes tyres, and he did not want to see them in the school. So I then had to build a fence to go around these daffodils. But daffodils are another plant that you can dye with. You can do natural dyeing with. So again, just a couple more ideas. So here you can see my plant beds with daffodils in that we then had to cover with pallets to build a little fence around it and fill it with wood chipping so that my head teacher wouldn't get rid of my little tire beds. But again, the good thing about tires is the ground where we put them on, there was kind of soil underneath it, but it was so compact with rubble. There was no way we could dig down into it. It was just too far gone. So lifting the plant beds up and filling them with topsoil compost. At one point, I think we put leaves in them, Carol, didn't we, just to cover them over for the frost and things. So, you know, they give you a really good kind of bed to work with. And, you know, again, you can get other departments involved, get the art department involved and ask them. Those two images on the left are not mine, by the way, just, you know, disclaimer there, the one on the right is. But, you know, you could get the art department involved to do something cool, you know, or even get your D&T, you know, RM or product design department involved to kind of build something for you at the start of term. I don't know if you guys do, but in September, we usually do kind of an intro project for years 10 and 12. And we give them like what we call like a one-shot scrap heap challenge, as 2 weeks to kind of design and make something. So it's a great opportunity to get them to help you to build something. So if you don't have space, make it. That's my motto. So we've got advertising and getting recruits. So we just started out, again, we kind of eco warrior based. We were looking to do all things eco, not just the garden. So we came up with this little poster on the left, just kind of recruiting for eco warriors. And then we have such a cute little team, don't we, Carol? So we've got Raf in our little year 7, Raf, who loves making us posters. So he made us these little posters. So we did a sunflower competition where we've given each form group a sunflower to grow, and the one who grows the tallest wins. However, I accidentally gave them all dwarf sunflower seeds, so Carol sneakily has had to switch them all out and put the normal ones in. But you know, just putting posters up around the school, building awareness, competitions, anything like that would just get the students more involved in wanting to do the garden inside of it as well. You could literally have a dedicated art textiles gardening group, get your sixth formers to look after it, get your GCSE students to look after it. But I found that a little bit too limiting. Again, my year 10s and 11s aren't that interested at the moment. They did like the eco printing side of it, but maintaining the garden, what you don't want to do is make it your job. And even when we've been going through the eco school application, one thing the guy kept saying to me was, how are you going to sustain this? How can the students take over? Because we had a beautiful pond put into our school 6 years ago, and that member of staff left. So the legacy should always be, well, not maybe not legacy, but it should always be what happens if you leave, who's going to look after it, who's going to maintain it. And if you've got a good enough gardening club that someone just needs to monitor every now and then hopefully it'll do it for itself. And unless you've got a really big and dedicated team of art or textiles, you might need to think about opening it up to the school.
Quick question, Rachel.
Yeah.
Somebody's asked, how do you stop students vandalising the garden beds and the plant areas?
You would be surprised. I would say plant bed wise, we don't have many. We've not had anyone pull a daffodil out. We did have a little bit of a problem with litter, but that's mainly from when it blows around. But I think as well, the students see me doing it, and they'll go out and they'll see me digging and pulling weeds out. And when they see me doing it, they'll be like, what are you doing, miss? And they ask me questions. And I think the more that they see me do it, the more they kind of respect what I'm doing. We did have one incident where, and I'll tell you about woodlands for trees in a minute, but we got donated 120 trees. And I had one kid that pulled some out there. I say they were trees. In my head, when someone tells me they're going to give me a tree, I was expecting like a tree, but we ended up with a stick. I didn't really expect that. Anyway, so we had 120 trees, and one kid did go and pull them out. And luckily for me, we'd caught him on CCTV. Somebody had actually flagged it for me, caught him on CCTV, and I just came down on him like a ton of bricks. The good thing about that was he was like the cool kid of the year group. So he was like the one that all of them were like following. So I put him in a Friday after school detention for an hour where me and him learned about gardening. And I took pictures to send to his grandma so that he would get like, you know, credit for it. But since then, we haven't had too many problems. I think it's just getting the right students on board with it as well. And again, that'll just kind of be your report. We do have CCTV in the right areas, which helps us. If you can have it near your room, then great. But honestly, I haven't really had a problem. I think it's the same, you know, if you think about your house, if your house is tidy, you don't make it a mess, do you? Whereas if it's a mess, you kind of add to the mess. Do you know what I mean? I think when they're nicely kept garden beds, it keeps it going, it keeps it nice. Please don't tell me I'm wrong, because I'm happy with the thought that mine aren't going to get vandalized. Next one, sorry. So the other thing, we just, again, disclaimer, we haven't done this yet. So we were supposed to do it during the Easter half term, but I ended up moving house, so we weren't able to do it. We're actually going to do it in the October half term. But local primary schools near us have done it, and that is hosting a ground force day. And so that is literally inviting anyone in the community into your school for the day to help you set up. So whether that's turning over plant beds that are already there, whether it's planting and scattering wild flowers, whatever that might be, you can call up every landscape gardener in the town and just say, look, we're doing a ground force day for the school. Can you give us an hour? Can you lend us the equipment? Is there anything you can do to help us? You can contact tree surgeons and see if they'll donate wood chippings to kind of help tidy some areas up. And we had on our kind of industrial estate where we are, there's a tech studio who's quite pally with our head teacher, and they actually gave us staff. They gave us 6 members of staff with 2 hours. Now, again, we haven't cashed that in yet, but we have it in writing that we're allowed 6 staff for 2 hours, which, you know, manpower helps. So we've got a mobile coffee van. It's called Dan Coffee Man. It's a very authentic original name. He parks up his little truck, and at the back of his truck he's got a full barista coffee machine in there. So just inviting those over to do your little ground force day is good. And also Sainsbury's do donate as well. I'm pretty sure other supermarkets would, but if you just contact your local Sainsbury's and tell them what you're doing, they'll often give you a bag full of teas and coffees and milks and everything if you wanted to do it for free. But we found that local businesses, I mean, they'll do a discount for you, but then you don't need to stress and think about making, 50 people a cup of tea. And me being Yorkshire, everyone wants me to make a cup of tea. So I want to remove that stress. So here's a couple of examples of kind of other schools and churches. Loads of people do ground force days. It's not unknown. It's definitely something that, you can get parents involved. You can have students in. You can do a day in the holidays. You can do a Saturday. We've also managed to get a charity in to help us as well, which I'll explain in just a second. So just kind of rallying everyone together for a day just to get it done is always a great start. Because otherwise it can be overwhelming when you think, where do I even start with this? Then we get onto the conversation of plants, which is my favourite bit. The first thing that we did as an eco school, or to attempt eco schools, is we just sent a letter home. So I wrote a letter and said, hi, I'm Miss Addy, I'm the school's eco lead. We need some money because we want to buy some plants and we want to buy some flowers, some wildflowers, and we want to do this. And we actually raised we've raised over £1,000 now just in parent pay. In fact, the finance department emailed me the other day saying we need to spend some money, and me and Carol were like, yes, let's get on that minibus and go shopping. But alongside that, during lockdown, I don't know if anyone else on here has had this, but I had a plant addiction during lockdown. I had about 68 houseplants. It got quite out of hand. So I was at my local garden centre a lot, checking out the latest houseplants. I have cut down. But every weekend I'd go in there and they kind of begun to recognise me. And one day I just introduced myself, having been on Fiona's workshop, and just said, I've been on this workshop. I really want to do natural dyeing in my classroom, but I need some of these plants. And we will give you a handout as to what plants you can go and buy from your garden centre to do natural dyeing. And he said to me, here's a trolley, fill it with as many plants as you want. So I looked at my food teacher who'd been helping with this project and said, are you any good at Tetris? She was like, yeah. And we managed to get over £700 of plants on one trolley. I don't know how we did it, but we did it. We filled one trolley. And they even delivered it to us for free as well. They've also given us equipment for our school. I even got invited to their staff Christmas party. That's how well I get along with them now, it's just really good. They come into our school, they'll talk about horticulture as a career. We're actually planning to take the kids, because we've got money now, the next round of summer bedding plants, we are going to take a minibus of kids and just say, right, you've got £500, off you go spend what you like. And they're going to talk them through how to look after them, what plants to put in and things like that as well, which is, it's great. Anyone who's listened to one of my teen chats before, I've only done one, but anyway, B&Q I harp on about. My friend back home told me about this one where you get discount, so you can go on something called B&Q Community and they will donate to schools. So if you walk in there and you flash your badge, I think you have to sign up before you go in, but But I've just walked into my B&Q centre, flashed my teacher's badge and said, look, you've got a heap of discounted plants out the back, can I have them? And they just gave them to me. So you're probably aware that most kind of supermarkets and shops like that, they don't prevent them from being pot bound. So they won't pot them up once they're pot bound. And even places like Tesco's, they're not allowed to water their plants in store. So, you know, a few days and they're dead. So you can ask them to donate them to the school rather than putting them in the bin. And even if, you know, they're kind of dying off, it still gives the students a chance to plant them, even if you're then getting rid of them 2 weeks later, if that makes sense. It's still giving them that experience of putting the plants in. And if they do come back to life, I think, again, Carol would have to help me with this one, but I'm pretty sure we had about 200 pansies at one point that were dying off, and we've managed to put them in and they all started to come back to life again. They looked great. So definitely B&Q, get on that website and sign yourselves up if you haven't already. And it's not just plants, you can get wood, tiles, anything you want, pin, you name it, they'll give you anything you need. So definitely do that one. Like I said, doesn't need to take you hours. Do it over a period of time, get your sixth form students involved. I've got a couple of sixth form business and citizenship students that come and help me out. Get the debate club involved because they love like kind of, you know, challenging people. So we've got 2 of our debate clubs coming along. But, you know, one thing to add here is just to always appreciate them. So I took my Flowerland Garden Centre, bit promotion there. There's one in Ivor and one in Bourne End, if anyone wants to go and spend their money there. I took them a head teacher's award from my school and handed it to them personally and said thank you very much. And we did a mention on our website directing parents there. And then the other thing that we did was when we wanted wildflower seeds, we took a picture of the Flowerland box that we wanted and said, please go to Flowerland and buy these wildflower seeds, which then just sent business back to them. We are hoping to do a charity day in the garden centre as well, but that'll probably be next year now. Am I rambling? Is this okay? Sorry, Tom. I could talk for hours about this. The other thing to think about is charities. And again, I didn't even know these existed until I started on this journey. It's really hard for me to tell you what's going to be where you are because charities are different all over the country. So where we are, we've got the Chiltern Rangers, so they cover Buckinghamshire. They help with a multitude of different things. So like I said, they fitted us out a full pond 6 years ago. I then felt incredibly embarrassed when I got them back in about a month ago and said, can you help me with this? And they were like, yeah, we did it 6 years ago. We didn't realize it looked so bad now. And I felt really bad about it, but I didn't know they did it originally. But they did agree to come back and help me with it again. So getting local charities involved is a really good one. We've got Wood for Trees as well. So the Wood for Trees group have just come in and done, I've put a link on there, you can have a read. They came in and got all of our year 7s and all of our year 8s to plant up a tree and take them home, look after them for a year, grow them, and then they plant them in a local forest. So there's loads of different things. Oh, and the Rotary Club, they gave us a tree. Again, Carol would have to help me with this. I hope you're listening, Carol. I think we got a cherry blossom in the end. I can't remember what tree they gave us, but they gave us a tree as well. So again, contact your local Rotary Centre because they often have pots of money where they can help you out with things, because the trees are where the money starts to get too much. Plants are easy. It's when you get into trees. And again, Fiona will probably tell you that the trees give you very nice prints. So come back to that in a second. So a couple of potential project ideas, things that we've ran in the Sewing Bee Club. We've done, well, I say we've got an eco-printed toiletry bag that our technicians worked on for us as an idea. And also we've done or come up with the idea for aprons. We've done plant pot covers. Again, the plant pot covers weren't made out of eco fabric, but they were just used to kind of enhance the houseplants that we have around the school and just kind of putting that stamp of textiles all around the school because they know that they're being made by our department, which is great. Links to the NEA, we've got new and emerging technology, so this will eventually be a new and emerging technology, and then thinking about sustainable manufacturing. And then for Art Textiles, there's a heap of designers on there. There's links in the bottom of this so you can have a look through and see what you think. So these are just exemplar works now. So this is my lovely technician, Debbie. She's on the line somewhere. So this is us at Fiona's print workshop. So we went on to this workshop last, can't remember when it was now, Fiona. It was a few months back now, wasn't it? We went on to our print workshop and we absolutely loved it. And I just remember peeling back those leaves on that first picture on the left and thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. And then from that thinking, oh, I bet the kids will have the same experience. And they did. I did some, my friends was due to have a baby. So I tried to do some bundle dye and Babygrows. Unfortunately, they didn't turn out very cute. So I didn't actually do anything with them, but they are now displayed in the classroom. They're at school. Tote bags. And then just other things as well, you know, just getting students drawing. We've made sketchbooks. So this one on the bottom left corner is one that Fiona does on her workshop, which is just taking an A3 piece of card and cutting it up and making it into a little sketchbook. And then there's some other bits and bobs on here as well. So a friend of mine does made some applique leaves for me, which was a nice inspiring project to then get the students to go on and do their own applique leaf projects. And then also we've got some other bits on here as well, leaf press printing. And then just, sorry, I'm rushing really quick now because I know I've talked too long. We've got just the variables on here. I just wanted to show you really quickly how we tested different plant leaves in the classroom as well. So we took different leaves and we looked at the moon side and the sun side. We looked at time. We looked at, so you can see where we've kind of labeled them. We put more iron oxide in one of them. So that was just kind of show you a little variables lesson. And then lastly was a library display that we've just done. Again, you can see here where we've taken inspiration. We've made, I think we made 100 leaves for the library for the Earth Day display, which has just gone. And we actually even made our own little kind of labels to go on there as well. So our Eco Warrior and Sewing Bee labels, so everything's branded. And these are, sorry, D&Ters for my frayed work. It was a very quick project, and we just kind of got these for them to take home as a little bit of branding as well. So that's pretty much everything from me. Sorry I flew through everything on there. I could, like I said, I could talk for hours. There's a heap of links on this page for you to have a look at. Do kind of go over and have a look what resources are available on our website. Definitely give our Instagram a like, otherwise Nikki will never forgive me for not mentioning that. I think it's, you know, what we post on our social media is very valuable, not just for yourselves, but for the students as well. I always share everything we put on social media to my students' social media.
Rachel, as well. I have put all the links further up. So I put.
Oh, I did this for you, so you didn't have to.
I know, but I put it. I know. Thank you so much. But
normally I manage the chat.
I put it in. I know. I feel like I've got a lot to live up to. I put the direct link to the resources, Pinterest, Instagram, the same as you've done. I've put them all further up as well. So if you want them today, ladies, I know some of you must be doing it because I noticed my Instagram is going up tonight, which is lovely.
Right, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to introduce Fiona because I've rambled on, so forgive me. So Fiona I met Fiona when I went on her eco printing for teachers workshop, and she gave me the most amazing insight to eco printing as a teacher and how to pass that on to my students. So Fiona, I'll let you share your screen and do your little presentation.
Hopefully it will work. Okay. It feels quite strange this talking to myself, and I'm not really, as I've been out of teaching for a few years, it seems very odd indeed. But hello everybody, my name is Fiona Balding and that is me. Bit about me, I have been a food and textile teacher, now retired, but I was in the classroom for 38 years. I was a teacher training mentor with the children training group, and from there I went on and as an associate joined the Food Teacher Centre, and with them started delivering quite a lot of workshops and training sessions to teachers. And as a group we were co-authors of one of the GCSE food preparation and nutrition books that were the revision guide that was published by Collins. But during this time, and about 7 years ago, I found eco printing quite by chance at the Festival of Quilts. And if anyone's ever been to the Festival of Quilts, I really strongly recommend going. They have a fantastic area where you can actually go and see artists at work on various different things to do with printing and things to do with dyes. But I was just totally inspired and watched quite a long time a German lady show how to do a bit of eco printing, and it was a technique I'd never seen. And I went away from that and tried to find out a little bit more about it. It was quite hard. There isn't a lot about it. There is not a definitive textbook about the subject. So tried to start off with, try to teach myself. And one of the reasons I was so interested in it is because I am a gardener, I'm an allotment holder, I grow a lot of stuff. I grow a lot of stuff now for eco printing. And also as a dog owner, I'm in my local woods every day, surrounded by all the materials I need for eco printing. So it just seemed like a great fit for me. So it just I sort of took myself off and I found whatever I could. I think I found things like people's blogs in America on something, doing something. And I sort of started off on the journey of eco print, really trying to teach myself. I'm making a lot of mistakes, and that's one of the things that through this I wanted to give a bit of advice if you're starting, is to try and find out from people that have, you know, experienced it, been through the process, and you can actually sort of tap into what they know, and you know, you can learn a huge amount from them in a lot of short space of time. So that's just a bit about me. I've been out of the classroom really for about 4 years ago, and that really coincided when I started to do my my workshops, not only for teachers, but I'm also up and down the country in various artist studios running workshops for various people. So what exactly is the process? Well, it's actually quite a magical process. I think it is the nearest thing to magic that I can imagine. It relies on the natural dyes and tannins, and it really is quite derived from natural dyeing. And if you think about natural dyeing, we're extracting the colours. Well, this is really taking it one stage further. But if we keep the leaves actually as a leaf, and we prepare the fabrics or the papers that we use with mordants, we can actually then start to extract not only the colours from that leaf and plant material, but also the shapes. And that's where it starts getting very exciting in terms of design and how we can create actually prints quite quickly. And that's one of the great things about this process, is that prints can be created quite quickly, and you can create quite a lot of prints quite quickly. If you sort of get started on eco printing, it's addictive. You'll want to do more, and you know, and I set myself up, and you know, I'll probably print all day, and it is just now the beginning. Obviously, leaves have just started to appear back on the trees, so we are at the start of the eco print season, which is really exciting. Because one of the things that Rachel mentioned is, you know, the variables of the process, because every time you eco print, different things happen, and different things will happen for different reasons. And one of the things that makes as a variable is the time of year. So at the moment, with new fresh leaves, we're expecting really nice bright colours. So where I'm itching to get started, I'm going to have a day tomorrow. I've got workshops coming up over the next 2 or 3 months. And I always like to test my leaves before I actually deliver a workshop, because some leaves will print better at different times of year. So I'll be testing tomorrow and possibly at the weekend as well. Another great thing about the process, it is a totally sustainable process. We start off using mordants, and you know, if we read into the subject and you know something about mordants and what mordants actually do to the fabric, the mordant actually sort of sits and is soaked into the fabric and is there really to attract the dyes and to keep it permanently attached to that fabric. Once you put a mordant into a fabric, you cannot wash it out. It's one of those magical things, really. And there are lots of, and another variable we use in the process, there are lots of different mordants we can use on different types of fabrics to get different sorts of results. But the great thing that it is very sustainable. The mordants we use will go back to the earth. We use iron sulfate quite a lot, which is actually a really good fertilizer for acid living plants like the rhododendrons, azaleas, that sort of thing. So every time I finish printing, the mordant goes onto the garden. the waste leaves will then go onto the compost heap. And the best fabrics to use are the ones that have been washed and washed and washed to get all the sort of the dye and all the sizing, etc., out of there. So I go and get a lot of stuff from charity shops, and that's something to think about if you are starting the process, to actually get to know the people in your charity shops. The ones that look local to me, I go and actually sort of tell them what I'm looking for, and they will save me stuff and actually sort of text me saying they've got such and such a thing in, am I interested? And you know, I usually am, and I'm down there getting things like, you know, cotton sheets, old silk wedding dresses are great as well. If you can find old wool blankets, these things are brilliant for eco printing. So I mentioned just a little bit about mordants, and if you want to do some eco printing, and if you find information about it, and at the end of the presentation I've put 1 or 2 places to actually look and to get information from, to share information. You will find there's lots of discussion on things like Facebook sites on mordants, which mordants to use with different fabrics. This is obviously one of the variables. So the mordant I use quite a bit, particularly in an introduction to, if I'm running an introduction to eco print workshop, is the mordant iron sulfate. It is cheap to buy, and a little goes an awful long way. And as I said, it is actually something that is a garden fertilizer, so it goes on the garden when we're finished. So mordants are important to actually know which ones to use with which materials is also important, so you actually sort of get the best results from your resources. And again, you know, it's one of those things, learn from an expert, because they will save you an awful lot of trial and error time. So those fabrics will need to be prepared. I always scour my fabrics, particularly my cottons, the cotton fabrics and the linen fabrics that I might use for eco printing will go through the washing machine on a 90-degree wash to get any sizing out of them, or any remnants of detergents or conditions out of them. And I usually add to the washing machine some soda crystals to do that. So that is the first prep really for your cellulose fibres. Your protein fibres, which probably are the best fibres to use for eco printing, but obviously not the cheapest, need very little mordanting. I usually, with silk, I would probably use an alum, again another cheap mordant to buy, or it's sometimes known as potassium alum sulfate. And now also with the mordants, lots of dye assists, things like the tannins that can be used in combination with the mordants, because what we're really looking for is the reaction between the tannins and the dyes in the leaf and the mordants on the fabric to actually get the print. And if you look at the print that might have on the screen now, that's a very simple mirror image print where I've actually just dipped the fabric into an iron solution and made a mirror image print. So the leaves go down on one side, and then the other half without leaves goes over the top. It's all then compressed very tightly into a bundle and steamed for about 90 minutes. But if you look closely at the print, you'll see one of the things about, and I know Rachel mentioned the sun and moon sides of leaves, which is a little bit airy-fairy. I like to call it the right and wrong sides in fabric terms of leaves, because each side will print slightly differently. Okay, so you can see there's a mirror image, but the colours and the tones are slightly different on each side. So it's just a very simple print there. When you've sort of got the hang of working sort of with using iron and getting quite dark, but quite strong dramatic colours. And one of the things it's quite nice to do is to actually then start working with the prints and the natural dyes, because the natural dyes, you can actually combine natural dyes and eco print together, where you start off first of all by dyeing the fabric, and then once the fabric's dyed, you then place the leaf on, and the leaf then will actually take out some of the colour of the background dye. Sometimes it will just completely take it out and look quite translucent, as you can sort of possibly see in that picture there. But then sometimes we get different colours. So there's a very nice leaf, a very nice green leaf on there, which is actually a very interesting tree called pseudo acacia. It's a locust bean leaf actually, and it grows in my local churchyard, and I raid it every time I want to have a if I run a workshop. So you can see some of the images, hopefully, that they're coming through to you. You can sort of see some of the effects you can get. So again, with the natural dyes, it's a more advanced skill. You'll have to start working through the basics, but this is the sort of skill that sort of people want to know, people want to go on to develop from, and it is important that you use your materials sensibly and carefully. You know what you're doing with them, because natural dyes, if you buy them, they are very expensive, and as everything at the moment, everything is sort of going up in price. So it's just a little bit about how we can you can actually then start to think about bringing in natural dyes. So again, as I mentioned, I would advise getting some tuition to save you time, to save resources. When you start, you make loads of mistakes. I made loads of mistakes, and looking at them now, thinking, what did I do that for? I know a little bit about it now. So again, I would suggest trying to find someone to give you a workshop, and that will depend, and I've given you one or two ideas at the end of people who do run workshops. I do run workshops, and I'm hoping that with Dawn's help, that we're going to be running some workshops with the Textile Skills Centre in the autumn, so hopefully more to follow on that. I do have one coming up for teachers that I run locally to me, because I'm in Bedfordshire. So there is one coming up in July. If anyone is interested, the details are on there later. So that's just sort of an example, and you can sort of see this was obviously a workshop we were doing in lockdown, so we were all masked up, but and trying to keep our distance. It's a great day. We get through an awful lot of printing. You'll go away with stacks of stuff, and also the pile of notes that I've, the main key things, the notes that I think, are the basis of, your knowledge on how to actually achieve good results. So some ideas of the things I've actually done, the things I sort of make with my prints, because as a teacher, for me, there always has to be an end product in mind. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that print now you've done it? Because if I've done work and I've done sort of dyeing and printing, you end up with a stash of stuff that you've got to do something with, otherwise they just sort of sit there. So a lot of the stuff I've been working on recently has been to do with bookbinding. So I take a lot of the papers, particularly that I do, and sometimes I actually use fabric covered books, and at the moment I'm doing a lot of experiments with leather, to do some leather bound books. So that's a really interesting thing to do. And one of the books I like to do, and there's a couple of examples on there, is what I call a Coptic bound book, which is a great book for sketchbooks because it opens completely flat. So these are just sort of some ideas. And I sort of mentioned at the beginning how I started. And I was just playing and experimenting with myself. This is one of my very first prints that really, it was on a piece of wallpaper lining, which is a great way to start, a really good cheap way to start, particularly if you're introducing it with children. Wallpaper lining is a huge role. Just cut pieces off, it's nice and thick. It withstands that steaming process, which is quite important. But you can just sort of see, I've got a very monochrome, sort of quite dramatic image. It was very simple, but I actually loved this print so much. I really wanted to make a book with it, and this was one of my first attempts at making a book with that print that I was actually sort of happy with, which involves, again, it involves a stitch, etc. So that's pretty good. Another thing I often make on the workshops, you know, particularly if I'm going to various studios and that studio wants, you know, an end result at the end of the day, lampshades are a really good one to do. And that I quite like as well, to actually buy from charity shops old lampshades, strip them right back so I've got the frame, and then just buy the components, print the fabric, just buy the sort of the flammable, the inflammable, the backing that is fireproof, shall I say, to go on the back. So lampshades are quite a nice thing to do. And again, you know, there's no reason why you couldn't work into some of these sort of fabrics with machine embroidery, hand embroidery, lots of possibilities. Rachel mentioned Babygrows a little bit.
I also bear that in mind, Fiona.
Sorry. Babygrows are great because you, again, charity shops have loads of them for very little money. You know, in my local one, Little Babygrows, you can find them 50 pence each. So, you know, and you can then start to work on those, and they're a small garment, so you can bundle them quite easily. So just sort of a couple of examples here. The one on the left, that's the more sort of the black and white with a sort of the hint of the yellow is a print I often do, and I call it Inspired by India. India being India Flint, and she is really recognised as an Australian artist who really started to develop the process. And hence all the leaves on there are eucalyptus, because obviously Australia is known for eucalyptus. That's what she uses. And if she has got some books out, but they're not particular, they're a bit of a not particularly a how to do it type of book on eco printing. It's more of a holistic process, if you ever read any of her work. So Inspired by India, how she actually works, she will obviously bundle things. And again, I was lucky enough to see her a couple of years ago before the pandemic at the Festival of Quilts, when they brought her over and she had an exhibition, and she was talking about her work. And she actually unbundled something on stage, and she actually sort of often, you know, whereas I use, you know, quite firm plastic tubes or things like wooden doweling to roll my work on, she would get sort of things like stones and actually wrap things and bundle things around stones, and it was quite, you know, quite organic sort of her process. So on the ones on the other side of the screen have been pre-dyed in a natural dye called logwood, and then plant material placed on the top and steamed on the top of that. And so you can see quite nicely, I think, on the close-up, some little very thin skinny oak leaves that I quite like to use as a tree in my local woods that has really unusual oak leaves growing on them. So as I said, when you start, you end up with a lot of things that don't really quite work out, and things that are a little bit, or bits of things at the end, or there is a lot of time when we're printing, we might use what we call an iron blanket, and the iron blankets basically is there to assist the print. But often these get really quite interesting marks on them, and I did have a bit of a, well, what am I going to do with some of these things that I've got all these iron blankets, what am I going to do? And I sort of started making a series of sort of just little machine embroideries, and these are really very easily put together, basically just strips of fabric with some simple machine embroidery. But I did find that you know, when you're doing things like, I've put quite a few stones on these, because some of the pieces I was looking at, you know, you're looking at, actually that could be quite a stone, and you try for a long time to just get marks to look like a stone, whereas an eco print, you can look at bits and that actually looks like a stormy style, they look like bits of stone. So I've just sort of developed some of those with some machine embroidery, and the little hair I did when it contains quite a bit of hand embroidery on the top there, which might also, again, just very easily, just layered bits on the back to sort of indicate the sort of the landscape, and the little seascape at the front there, the little bit here. Sometimes it's quite nice if you've done some eco printing. Another technique, once you've done some eco printing, is to actually then dip it in indigo, if anyone's into indigo dyeing. And that's another thing, if you were thinking about growing stuff, You're thinking about, what can you grow in the in your garden, in your little patch in school. Things like your natural dye plants. So things that grow easily in this country are woad. That grows on my allotment like mad. It just seeds itself everywhere. So that gives a nice blue dye. Indigo, not as easy, but it's possible. And another great thing to grow is madder. And madder gives that beautiful red colour, and you extract the madder from the roots of the actual plant. Okay,
Fiona,
so
I'm going to be really rude and just let you know that it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, sorry. So sorry to rush you. I know I talk too much.
I haven't got much left.
Sorry.
That's just a little bit about the workshop I'm running with the place where you can actually book it on Eventbrite. So it's up there. It's on July the 16th, and you came, Rachel, so you're in. If you come, you're in for a full-on day.
I couldn't stop. After I'd been, I came home and had to start stitching straight away. I think I made the bag that same night, Fiona.
yeah. It's one of those things, and it is magical, and it's the nearest thing in textiles to magic I think I've ever come across. And I sometimes go into schools as well as a visiting artist. So if you don't want all the hassle of trying to find everything for yourself, I can come in and do it for you. And Facebook groups, good ones. And this is the place really where I've learnt the most. After after struggling for, and just going through and doing bits of printing, and they were okay, I found Caroline Nixon, who is a retired GP, and she lives in Warwickshire. And I've done some classes with her. I started off with her sort of beginner's class, and then went on to do her a master class with her over a couple of weeks. She's very scientific. Okay. My friend Maria Clark Wilson is a teacher. She's based in Suffolk. She also runs workshops. I work, these are people I know. Elizabeth, another person I know, works in Glasgow. And you will see all these people contributing to various Facebook sites where, again, people share knowledge from all over the world. And it's really interesting to see what other people in different parts of the world are doing. So I've just put some examples for you there. And I think that is it. Excuse me.
Amazing. Thank you, Fiona. I'm so sorry to rush that. I'm just like you now. You look at this passion you're giving. I could literally talk about this for hours and hours. So apologies. So we are running slightly over time. So all of the PowerPoints sorry, Fiona, if you just wouldn't mind clicking stop share on your screen.
Sorry. Yeah, got that.
All of the PowerPoints that we've gone through tonight, including a list of plants for you to buy. So if you go into a garden centre, there'll be a full list on there as well, and a scheme of work for you to kind of have a go at this eco printing yourself, will be available on our website. We will drop the link in the chat box again, but you can find all of those just on the Textiles Skills Centre website. Fiona, I'll need to get a copy of yours to put on there as well, if that's okay for people to access yours as well. Again, just thank you so much, Fiona, for joining us. I honestly couldn't rave about your workshop enough, so hopefully we do get to do more together as Textile Skills Centre and Fiona, the eco printing genius. We finally, on our last note, as I always like to add, we are a group of volunteers, so if anybody is able to donate anything from 20 pence to £2 million, please do join our click on our donations link at the I'll drop in the chat box now. That just helps us cover costs. We have to pay business fees for Zoom, with us having 72 people tonight. Dawn, did you see that? 72.
I did. It was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on. And a huge thank you to Fiona and to Rachel for doing this tea and chat for us. Don't forget our next one. We run these monthly. So the next one is on the 24th of May, and that is with Kathy Sexton. And that's talking about mindfulness and how that can help you, how it can help your students. So definitely sign up for that one. Thank you again, everybody, for coming along. It's been absolutely brilliant. Everything is already up there on the website to download, except for Fiona's presentation. So if you want to hang on, that will be up, I'm sure, in the next sort of like few days as well. So thank you ever so much, everybody, and good night.
If anyone's got any questions, stay on the line. I've got a little bit more time, so if you do want to stay and ask us anything, please do. Thank you for all your thank yous. It makes it so worthwhile when everyone's really grateful. Thank you.